think a lot of what you and I are up to, Andrew, is that we're reconquering words that are either dirty words. People tell us, no, you can't use that word. It's so misunderstood, blah, blah, blah. But I think reconquering words and giving them new meaning actually works. It works.
Okay, great. That's great. And your book is called Syntheism, Creating God in the Internet Age. So creating God, right?
If God is the name of all our dreams combined into one point, if the name of that is the God point, then I'd love to retake the word God and put it back into its historical setting where it was originally used, which was, you know, ahead of the patriarch when we're moving is God, like the Ur-father, the Ur-patriarch there. And we have God as the other end.
So you put God in the future, which is interesting, I think, because God is usually considered the creator of the universe. So in the past, right? And you're putting
that's
in the future.
Christianity. Well, not even then. I mean, even the Bible doesn't claim that. The Bible claims created order in chaos.
No, but the Bible creates that God is the source of everything and all that. Right?
Yeah, that's kind of rubbish. But they're mixing up God and goddess. If anything is the source of anything, that would be goddess. That's we come out of the womb. So we consider the womb to be the source of everything. We talk about the source tied to the God concept is usually goddess for me. That's what's very popular with New Age people, because they're like goddess worshippers without being God worshippers. So I think you need both. You need to worship the Ur-father and the Ur-motor. You need the Ur-patriarch and the Ur-matriarch. That's what we always should do, and we always do. That's called religion. That's the whole point of religion. So we also retake the word religion here. So religion was another dirty word, and then we said, no. Religion is a beautiful word. Go to its etymology. Etymology, religare, French, Latin, medieval, meaning what connects people. Religion, what connects people. It has to do with healing. It has to do with connecting people together again, as if they were split up. So, and we want to be connected with one another because we're a flock animal, we're tribal creatures. We want the congregation, the most beautiful word to come out of the Abrahamic religions, congregation. We congregate, we build something together. That's what the tribe does. That's why I love the Holy Spirit in Christianity. I love anything that regards to congregation.
So in the congregation, you generate the Holy Spirit. That's the beautiful sort of idea.
That's what Jesus said. Jesus said in the Bible, he says that, well, after I've left, whenever you guys are together, two or more of you, believe it or not, including you and me, Andrew, right now, but whenever there are more than two of you together, that's where I'm at. That's God. That's what the Holy Spirit is. Slavoj, Žižek, and I agree that we can save large parts of Christianity. We could potentially write a third testament. But if we write a third testament, we have to leave Jesus Christ on the cross. He died on the cross. That was the point. So Father can go and die. So Father and Son are gone. And then we leave it to the community to be the community and to be divine.
Okay, I'm trying to understand that, because the Father and Son come together, and disappear, and then you have the Holy Spirit. That's the principal theological idea here? Or?
Yeah, but the point is this. Father and Son was a brilliant idea, because we know the tribe is led by the patriarchy. They pull us. Okay, the patriarch is the son. He's a grown-up man. We look up to him. All the little boys look up to him. They want to be like him. He's the chieftain and the priest at the same time. Okay, he's the benevolent tyrant, if you like so. Okay, built on the King Solomon character in the Old Testament. That's the idea of Jesus Christ, the Son. Okay, his father is the guy we don't see, because to believe that we're going to follow him, there has to be direction towards a goal. That's called the Promised Land. When Moses leaves Egypt, he takes the people. Well, he takes the Hebrews to the Promised Land. Okay, the name of the Promised Land is God. That means the father figure as the father of the father. Okay? That's God. That's the Father. So Father is where we're heading. Son is who leads us. And Spirit are who we become. You could perfectly well use, say, Barthes and Söderqvist tribal mapping theory or tribal anthropology based on modern data science, based on how human beings function, based on the tribe of the 200, 250 people, the congregation as a model based on the tribe. Congregation basically is the one thing that unites family and tribe into one thing. Okay, that congregation has to be on the move. Now, if we know this, if the sort of the mysticism is gone, And we know that we have to be on the move, and we know that we're nomadic and we're now moving into the future. It's along the time axis we're moving these days, moving into the future. For the congregation to walk into the future, we still need this. And of course, we can tell the story the way Jordan Peterson does, that there's a father, that's the point where we're heading, the God point. There's a son who leads us to go there, the combination of priest and chieftain who leads us to go there. And then we are patient. And then, of course, at the back of it all, we have the matriarch. And the matriarch in Christianity is Virgin Mary with the Jesus child. So she becomes not only the child of Jesus because her son is the Son of God. That means if she's the mother to the Son of God, she's the ultimate matriarch, meaning Virgin Mary walks at the very back, pushes us all forward. So then you get the Christian version of the patriarchy, matriarchy, tribal mapping on.
Okay.
That makes perfect sense. It's a beautiful story. It's worked really well. It could still work if people still believe in it, but it's not necessary to do it that way. And Slavoj Žižek's, in my point, as sort of Christian or post-Christian, post-atheist, is essentially that we can create the story now knowing why we did that story in the first place. And that happens when we go from the First to the Second Testament, the Bible. That happens when Jesus dies on the cross. When he dies on the cross, the curtain in the temple falls apart. When that falls apart, that means the two different sections of the inner sanctum of the temple are unified, meaning we as people get to look into where the mystics are at. Looking into what God really is. That God really is a story about our direction to make us survive and thrive and live whole and full lives.
Okay. So that what is hidden becomes kind of revealed, something like that.
Which is problematic because we live increasingly in a digital world today where everything becomes transparent. Everybody gets to know everything. And that's exactly why I'm telling people that it's important to create sacred spaces. For example, confession booths. For example, places where you work with tantra, or you work with ayahuasca, you work with modern spiritual practices, but you build the wall around it and say, okay, we turn off our smartphones, we turn off all the data flows so we can talk freely in this space. But at the end of the day, what's called mysticism, which is this is knowledge that's taken you years to get. It is taking you years to understand, and it's taking years to understand this must not be spread widely among people because they will misunderstand it. Okay, that's dangerous. If knowledge that cannot be understood gets out in the public, it would be completely misunderstood. The entire history of philosophy and theology is basically misunderstood today because it's reinterpreted as being symbolic. Words and names are being thrown around by people who simply haven't studied. They don't know what they're talking about. That is a big mistake. But that's basically a condition we live in at the moment. So if the genie is out of the bottle, all we can do is to learn to know how the genie works and tame the genie and try to turn the genie into something that works to our advantage as humans.
Yeah, so there is a very dangerous genie out of the bottle at the moment.
Yes.
And that seems to be clear.
Well, what I'm working towards is basically to understand in a forgiving way what the Enlightenment did. And starting with the Frankfurt School in the 1930s, we started learning that being enlightened, living in a world that becomes coldly scientific, killing a lot of spirituality and killing even the human soul in the process, which we have to reinstate now, caused a lot of damage. That's a perfect example of, all the knowledge was out there. Okay, but if all the knowledge was out there and the priests are now undressed and religion no longer has a sacred space, and that sacred space that should have existed has been completely corrupted, by the way, by pedophile priests and all kinds of things. Okay, we better let the air in. Better let it all out. Better get the genie completely out of the bottle. Better even crush the bottle and throw it away so we then can deal with the genies. Okay? That's where we're at. But I think we need to define new sacred spaces. And I think any private confession booth, any environment that requires a code of silence, it should be celebrated. And that we have to do that all over again. But the knowledge that is out there already available to people have now to be explained. Means if it's out there, you can read it on Wikipedia, you can read it online, but you don't understand it. Okay, you need teachers to guide you through that, all that huge flow of information, all the data, to guide you to understand it. And we have to work very quickly in doing that and go deeper.
Okay, well, the example I was thinking about in terms of the genie being out of the bottle is, years ago, I started doing a Buddhist practice in Vajrayana tradition. And I had to do all of these sort of stage by stage retreats and it was a gradual sort of learning process, right? And then you would get the initiation, and you would go on to do other stuff, and there would be another initiation, and it would go on and on and on until the end, theoretically, right? And the stuff that they would be transmitting is now available everywhere on the internet. So that's just an example.
Yeah, and that's causing a lot of havoc. We have to get used to that. We have to get used to the fact that we're living increasingly in a transparent world where everything is being memorized. So I'm not naive about that. In that way, I can see the Enlightenment project coming from the West, hitting the world over the last 100 years was a good thing in the sense that, okay, it's all out now. It's all out now. Basically, it's wildly misunderstood. Tragically misunderstood, meaning we have to re-understand the fundamental axioms. We have to re-understand religion. We have to retake the word God. We have to give it a new meaning that makes sense to us now. And I'm not post-atheistic in the sense that we can use the word God symbolically or something like that. I'm not ironic at all about anything I do. I'm not ironic. I'm not an ironic Christian like Jordan Peterson. I refuse to go ironic about what I do. I'm against irony in this sense. No, I am a big proponent of the potential of tribal anthropology towards understanding what it means to be human and to be tribal. And to reinstate that today, to regain a confidence in the tribe. Because if we don't have a confidence in the tribe, we cannot have a confidence in the nation. And if we don't have a confidence in the nation, we cannot have a confidence in the empire that the internet is going to force us to live under.
Okay, so that's a good maybe segue into talking about another taboo word that we want to introduce here, and that is communism.
Yeah! Word, and we don't need
the most taboo word perhaps in the West, and
the second most taboo being capitalism, which is interesting. So there you go. But yeah, let's talk about capitalism and communism more than anything.
So so you're pretty critical about of individualism, and I guess there's different. We talked about Peterson, of course, Jordan Peterson, and he talks about sovereignty of the individual, and all that is what is the primary thing to link us to the community.
It's so American.
Because it's not a Ayn Randian type of individuality. It's more about just personal integrity being the first step, leading to, taking responsibility and all that. So, which is kind of stuff he says over and over again.
Yeah, but we are not individuals.
Okay.
We're not individuals. Okay. If you put God as an old man sitting on a cloud looking at us when nobody else likes us any longer, so you've got an old man liking our Instagram accounts or whatever God's supposed to do. Well, there wasn't the God there. That wasn't the point with God to begin with. That God's dead. I mean, you can certainly apply atheism on that God, right? The same thing here. The individual does not exist. The point with individuals means it's based on the wrong assumption of what it means to be human. René Descartes put his little individual inside a gland in your brain.
Yeah.
Smart
so the atomistic individual doesn't exist. What about the soul? You mentioned the soul earlier. Does the soul exist or?
Well, soul is a word we have for the emotional and intellectual inside of a human being, whether it's conscious or not. I think the word consciousness, again, is an American buzzword Americans love to use. I'm not sure I'm conscious all the time. Most of the time, I'm not. So I don't care about consciousness. I care about the human soul, or psyche, as it's called in Greek. Okay? The psyche, that is your inner world. That is a world that certainly exists, that your brain makes up, or your body makes up this world, focusing on the brain and the nervous system, orientate itself around the, in the world. But we are deeply social beings from the day we're born. If you leave a baby without physical contact, it will die from oxytocin lack. It's just die if we're not hugging with babies. We're incredibly social. We're not polar bears. If I was writing books for polar bears, I would say you can be an individual. You can eat your own kids if you like.
Polar bears are individuals, but human beings.
They are individuals, but we're not. Human beings are not. It's just a fact of life. It's just science. truth, right? So the question is rather, why do Americans hang on to individualism as strongly as they do? Because Cartesianism is the American state religion. It is the religion on which America was built. And that's why you go to churches in America and you pretend you're other religion, you pretend you're Lutheran Americans or Catholic Americans or Buddhist Americans and all that. And every damn American I meet talk about individuality and the sovereign individual all the time. That is your real religion in America. Okay.
Interesting. I was just listening to Jordan Peterson talk, and he says he's not an individual in the Ayn Randian sense. He's an individual in the Kantian sense. That's what he said. So that's maybe.
Well, yeah, but Kant was Cartesian.
Yeah. Okay.
Immanuel Kant perfected Cartesianism. So I always claim, read Descartes and read Kant. They write brilliantly, and they were great philosophers. But they created a religion called individualism, and that's tied to atomism in physics, which has also now failed, as we discovered physics doesn't work according to atomistic principles. The particles are made up by us when we crush with the fields, okay? And the nation. Okay, those three ideas, the individual and atomism and nationalism, are tied together. You can even touch capitalism to them if you like to. But these are this is one ideology. There's one ideology originally. Whether you call it socialism or you call it liberalism or call it conservatism, doesn't matter.
You put socialism as part of that same ideology.
One meta ideology. And that meta ideology you can call Cartesianism, perfected by Kantianism. You could call Cartesianism Kantianism. Immanuel Kant did that beautifully. But if you like Jordan Peterson, stop at Immanuel Kant. Okay, and you don't realize that there was a revolution that happened only a few years after Kant that started with Hegel. Then you have completely missed out on the last 200 years of European philosophy. Completely. Okay, nobody's a Kantian in Europe anymore. It doesn't exist. Why? Because the Hegelian revolution kickstarted what later became Nietzsche and Freud and Jung, these guys that Jordan Peterson loves. But since Jordan doesn't get Hegel, that connects Kant with the other guys.
He's missing Hegel in
his understanding of philosophy. Because without understanding Hegelian dialectics, you don't understand how these guys think and why they reached the conclusions they did and how useful it is today. And Slavoj, Žižek, and I have both been saying for the past 15 years, we need a massive return to Hegel to understand the current predicaments we're stuck with. And that can set us free to then go into dialogue with the East, say China and India, to then create an ideology.
Yeah.
Internet protocol has already created the empire. That's what we claimed in our book, The Global Empire 2003. The empire is already a fact. It's already here. It's technological. It's not economical. It's technological. It already exists. We are now 7 billion confused bodies tied to one thing that knows what it's doing. This genie that's come out of the bottle is called the internet. It's called digital. We better get used to it. We better understand it. We better see how it functions. And we better understand that most of what we've done so far for the last 20 years has been terrible mistakes in children's diseases. You know, influencers on Instagram, bad idea. It's not going to work. It's not going to. Just another Ponzi scheme among all the other Ponzi schemes the internet's been for the first 20 years. And we're still going to have to learn from that 10 years until some people finally start figuring out what digital really is. And the one thing it is that it's an empire. Okay, it's an empire and we cannot even get along inside our own nations. America is about to move towards civil war. Okay, China is really risky too. You know, if Putin dies in Russia, Russia falls apart. The European Union is falling apart. None of these systems are stable. They're all built on nationalism. Not even nationalism holds up today. Now, if not even nationalism holds up, then what the heck are we going to build the next system on?
We have a world chaos system.
We have a great chaos. We're exactly like you were before the French Revolution, 1789. This is all back to the mid-1700s again. The new forces are in play. Then people learn how to read and write and count, and that created massive amounts of energy and eventually exploded because these new energies are misunderstood by an old elite who were corrupt and fat and didn't get what was happening. They were called the nobility, the monarchy, and the church at the time. And they were all blown up and blown apart because of it. The same thing is going to happen now with politicians, with academics, and with traditional business and finance, okay? They're all going to be blown up by the new force of digital. That means a new chaos will be around. We'll all value the order of the chaos more than anything, meaning if the order does not arrive on time, then we look for any order, meaning we're going to go for fake fallacies, dictatorships, authoritarianism on a massive scale. That's how we human beings react when God is not present. When there's only chaos, when there's only God, no God. We react by where the fuck is the direction? Where is the God point we should move towards? Who leads us there? Where's the Father? Where's
so
the Son?
maybe children do or something. I was writing this article about Greta. It's like people are getting kind of weird and cultish in all kinds of ways, and they're
with a little girl who's 16 years old,
worshiping children and acting.
Yeah. What does she know? she knows nothing.
Yeah.
Like I said the other day,
but
you know,
like,
the H.C. Andersen saga about the little child who exposes the emperor for being naked. Right? I said the other day, it's this time around it's so weird that it's time for the emperor to step forward and tell everybody the child is naked. But children are naked. They know nothing. Poor Greta, she knows nothing.
Yeah.
And she's being idolized. It's scary. It's really scary. But okay, let's go back to the words we're going to reconquer. Okay, we reconquered God. We reconquered religion. We own those words again. The beautiful words.
Yeah, I'm waiting till you build up to communism. Yeah.
Same thing with communism. Is a beautiful word. I'm not a socialist. I'm a communist.
Okay.
You know what?
Firstly, distinguish between those two things, because I think you tied.
Yeah, well, but I'm going to point out Karl Marx was not a socialist. Karl Marx was the communist. Brandon O'Neill, another friend of ours in the UK. Follow Brandon, whatever you do. Read Spiked Online every day. It's one of the best news sources out there you can get right now. Love Brandon to death. Brandon and his team over at Spiked Online are great. Brandon O'Neill, like me, is what you call a Marxist libertarian, meaning he's a communist but not a socialist. Okay, that's what Marx was too. That's what Karl Marx is so important. Okay, so commune is the name for human beings coming together. It's of course another name for the tribe. Or the congregation. Yeah. It's our human beings collaborating, not competing, collaborating towards creating shared value. Okay. The Soviet Union was not communist. Mao's China was not communist. They were Stalinist and Rousseauian. You know, they were Rousseauian empires. They were not communist. Communism hasn't happened. Okay. The reason why communism hasn't happened is something Marx warned about. He said, if you try to create communism and reinstate it from the top, when the time is not right for it, you will fail.
Yeah, it's true that Marx thought that communism would develop in more liberal democracies, right? It's like,
yeah, first you need
try to instill communism into a place that the ground was not fertile as a.
Yeah, the point is this. Communism can only be developed when the time is right. And what Marx celebrates is the proletarian. We call this guy the netocrat in our books because the time has come for the netocrat now historically. The netocrat is the guy who rides on the digital and then becomes a winner on digital, right?
Okay, that's confusing, right? Because we think of the proletariat as like the working poor. And
no, it's
what you talk about
you haven't read Marx. I told you the genius out of the bottle. People guess what Marx said and they don't even read the guys. Stupid. Don't do that. Go to the sources, read the guys. Karl Marx loves the capitalist. He loves the fact that capitalists can make a mark on the world and on history. And he says the proletarian is simply the guy who does it better than the capitalist. And the way the proletarian does it better than the capitalist is simply because the capitalist is a Cartesian, Kantian individual who tries to compete with everybody else and gets ahead by making the most money.
So he hasn't tapped into the source and power of the tribe yet. So
exactly. Meaning, if you can use technology to collaborate better, rather than just getting ahead of everybody else and making more money. Okay, so if you try to use collaboration in the best way possible, which is possible today because of the machines that are arriving, the machines are going to create the communist paradise, if anything, or at least they should, right? That means you create the ultimate environment for collaborative efforts between human beings. That beats the shit out of capitalism. Marx never said we should go on a revolution and kill the capitalist. He never said that. No, he said what we should be.
Didn't he talk about the dictatorship of what dictatorship of the proletariat and all that? Like,
well, what have we lived in for the past 100 years? The dictatorship of capital. Marx, there are only dictatorships. The question is who dictates. Everything is dictation. Everything is power. Everything is about who.
So all of these phrases and things that we think about in terms of Marx are actually sort of
You can't.
Extrapolations and
The
false
dictatorship of the
ideas.
proletariat is not the opposite of the democracy of the people. That's a silly idea. The democracy of the people did hardly existed as a concept in the 1830s and 1840s.
Well, when I hear dictatorship of the proletariat, I think of a lot of people violently rising up to kill the people in power, you know? So.
Well, can you read Marx, please? That's not what he writes about.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I've read some Marx.
Yes. Okay. But Brandon has read Marx, so have I, and we're Marxist. And the point here with Marx is that Marx, you have to have Marx to complement Nietzsche.
Uh-huh.
Because you end up with Jordan Peterson if you only read Nietzsche and skip Marx. You end up as some kind of round-in anyway. Because with Nietzsche, you get the completion of the celebration of the Cartesian Kantian individual. Nietzsche calls,
and you don't have a
right?
vision for the commune, for the common, or for
no such thing. Nietzsche is the individual, the ultimate individual, the Ubermensch, the aristocrat, as it calls him, this guy who creates his own values and steps out into the world and becomes godlike. Okay, brilliant, great stuff. Okay, I'm a Nietzschean, absolutely. But next to Nietzsche, you need Marx, because if you don't have Marx and start from Marx today, how the hell are we going to read history about how the tribe can become heroic?
Okay.
The heroic congregation from Christianity, the Holy Spirit, is exactly what Marx writes about. And what Marx says that if it's not in the afterlife, it's the current life, which actually is what Christianity claims too, because the heroic congregation.
But Marx also did say, I'm playing devil's advocate here, he did say that religion is the opiate of the people and all that.
He didn't mean opium in abusive
sort of
sense.
anti-religious,
He meant
wasn't
religion positively.
What?
He didn't mean it as an opiate abuse. Everybody took opium in the 1830s, 1840s. It wasn't abusive at the time. Nobody thought of it as abuse. He meant religion is comforting for people as a narrative story so they can do what they're supposed to do. He didn't have a problem with religion. Marx didn't have a problem with religion. He didn't have a problem with liberalism. He didn't have a problem with liberalism. He had none. Read Grundrisse. Read his works.
Yeah.
It's not there. He basically, in parallel with Nietzsche, developed, they're all Hegelians. They came out of Hegel. In parallel with Nietzsche, developed the idea of the heroic community. It's built on the Christian congregation as ideal.
Okay, can we distinguish the heroic community from the identity tribe, like in all of these, you know, because I think we both with Peterson on his attack of identity politics and social justice warriors and all that.
We're against Rousseau. The only problem Jordan hasn't named Rousseau yet. It's just like, if anything, Žižek and Peterson should go to the roots of their opposition. They got a shared opposition called social justice warriors today. They're everywhere. They own the administrations of academics and they run all over the place in politics at the moment, and they're terrible. Okay, social justice warriors are all Rousseauians. And if the liberals, they're Lockeans, okay? Locke and Rousseau claim we're all born with a blank slate. Yeah. So you can do anything with any human being. We're all the same, or if we're all the same and we're just blank slates, you can basically reinforce any idea you want on the human body and the human soul. That's Rousseau for you. That's what social justice warriors think. That's exactly why I don't care what you say, because they only count who speaks and how many minutes did you get of attention. That's a childish level they're on. No, okay, Peterson and Žižek should go to the roots of where that comes from. If Peterson says it comes from Marx, he hasn't read Marx at all. He hasn't understood Marx. Why would Marx even write in that case? Because Rousseau did that 100 years before him. The problem is that Marx was completely opposed to Rousseau. And the political left in Europe was basically a civil war between Marxists and Rousseauians throughout the 19th century. And then some clever anarchists on the side. They're really interesting, actually, like Kropotkin. Okay. But eventually, we arrive with the struggle between Marxists and Rousseauians. And when Lenin makes the mistake of reinforcing the Russian Revolution too early and not waiting for the proletarian to step forward, but try to tame Russian peasants and put them in kolchoses, and making Lenin himself the only proletarian. That's a terrible mixture of Nietzsche and Marx that didn't work. It's called Leninism. And even Lenin knew that even worse would come. He warned about Stalin. And by the time Stalin takes over, then you get the Soviet Union. You get the massacres of the Ukrainians. You get totalitarianism. You get the collectivism. That was Stalinism. There's none of that in Karl Marx, please.
Yeah. So it's not Karl Marx.
Big difference between the two.
And yet I'm still pushing you on this just a little bit, because in that, when you look at the countries that call themselves communists, that call themselves Marxists, it seems that they've created the biggest hells on earth. Why would you agree with that? And
well, okay, Pol Pot in Cambodia did his PhD at Sorbonne in France in the 1960s on Rousseau, not Marx. Mao Zedong never even read Marx. Okay, he read little fairy tale books about old Chinese emperors and wanted to be one of them. Maoism is Rousseauanism, definitely. And Pol Pot went to Cambodia, and they're all uniting around something to hate. The easy route to get popularity is to find something to hate, the way social justice warriors do today. We hate the white heterosexual man. Now we're unified because we have an object we can hate, and that unifies us. Hitler did it with the Jew, Rousseau. Stalin did it with the kulaks of Ukraine, Rousseau. Mao did it, with anybody who wasn't with him, basically. And Pol Pot basically started killing anybody who wore glasses.
Intellectuals, yeah.
Exactly. So that is Rousseauanism. It's nothing to do with Marx. Sorry, but it doesn't.
Okay.
And I think the time for Marxism has come now. And I want to unify Christianity, whatever got left of it, and understanding the dynamic of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Why that was constructed, and Virgin Mary, by the way. See how tribal that was, why it worked. Take the best out of that so we can make that work again. Maybe that could be a Third Testament, if you like. If you want to do Christian theology, then you would definitely work on that Third Testament, which is tribal anthropological understanding of Christianity. Now that leads you on to communism, because communism is the same idea. We're going to go somewhere, and the name for the commune in the Bible is called the Promised Land. Communism is the journey towards the Promised Land. Now, you must not go in the wrong direction when you do that.
Yeah.
And that's exactly why Soviet Union was the wrong direction. It wasn't the Promised Land. Mao's China was the wrong direction. It wasn't the Promised Land.
So what's the right direction? What's the Promised Land?
My answer to that is it's exactly our most urgent need today. And I start with Simon Critchley, a friend of mine. Everybody read Simon Critchley. One of the best philosophers around at the moment. British philosopher, resides in New York. He's got the Hannah Arendt chair at the New School, professor there. He's a brilliant writer, okay? But he's written books on the infinite demand of the stranger, and he builds on two of the best European thinkers, two French Jews. Well, actually, one is French Algerian, one is French Palestinian. But they were called Derrida and Levinas. Okay, you read Jacques Derrida and you read Levinas. Those two philosophers talk about the infinite demand of the stranger, meaning the biggest challenge in our time is what Söderqvist and I call inter-tribalism. Inter-tribal is easy. Intra-tribal, meaning to love people within your own tribe. You're born to do that. Right? You're born to love the people around you. You're born to love your 200 most cherished friends in your life. That's easy. At least keep on doing that, okay? If you have a problem with your family, you're really fucked up. So, stay with your family, stay with the tribe, build from that, so you can then encounter strangers without wanting to kill them, okay? That's called intertribal. And what the priesthood has always done throughout history is try to nudge us one bit further towards loving a stranger that's even more exotic than the previous strangers that we love. We started with the villages in the river valleys 5,000 years ago, the bloodiest part of human history. Was 5,000 years ago when we killed anybody in the next village if we had starvation. Okay, that had to stop. So we built ritual places between the villages. The priests walk up these cigarettes and declare basically the religion of one village and the religion of the next village is actually the same religion. It's the same patriarch. We just call him God.
It's kind of early diplomacy or something like that.
Shared interest. Okay. So religion declares these two villages have a shared interest. Don't kill each other, because if you both survive and we create a more sustainable society, so we don't have to kill each other, then we can all prosper. We have a shared interest, a shared goal, a shared God, a shared direction. That's what religion has to do. So then we could create periods of peace by declaring monotheistic religions or polytheistic religions in India. It's the same thing anyway, two different levels. But we created these theistic religions so that we could unify through narrative by having a shared God. That's why these exoduses are in the Bible. It's Moses in the Promised Land, and then it's the exodus out of Babylon towards Jerusalem, which is the first rise of the nation state, the rise of the nation of Israel, coming out of an empire called the Persian Empire. So we should study empire, we should study nation, because now we have to move people from nation to empire, and we only have one way of doing that, and that name is machine intelligence. That's what the machines are here. They're our only hope. We can create communism through the machines, but if we don't try to create communism through the machines, what the hell are we going to do? Not that capitalism offers you anything, because it doesn't. Not that Jordan Peterson's American individualism offers you anything. It offers you absolutely nothing. It just offers you the same consumer society bullshit you've been offered for the past 100 years. Eat more, drink more, consume more, work harder, consume more. It's just nonsense. We're moving towards a society with 100% psychiatric diagnosis. And it's like, doesn't that scream there's something wrong here? Capitalism is a dead end. Gilles Deleuze and Felix Guattari wrote some brilliant books in the 1970s following Jacques Lacan. One is called Anti-Oedipus, the other one is called Thousand Plateaus. And the subtitle for the books is Capitalism and Schizophrenia. So they're arguing that capitalism will lead to schizophrenia. What then I discovered in the 1990s was that the internet helped us do exactly that. The internet itself is schizophrenic medium. It's flat and schizophrenic. It's a huge cuckoo's nest, 7 billion people screaming at the top of the lungs. No one is listening to anybody.
I got one. Works, right? I want to bring that up one level and say that God is actually schizophrenic in that sense, right?
If that's the God, yeah. But
if the internet is God, then God is schizophrenic.
Yeah, but not the contemporary internet. We need an exodus. Andrew, you pointed it out. The exodus we have to write about and study and create a narrative for is the exodus out of the current internet chaos into an exodus toward the internet order. And that internet order is not the Chinese Communist Party's dream of a sensocracy ruled by one party. That's the nightmare. But sensocracy, if it's decentralized, could definitely be that. So say you're a hacker today working on decentralized platforms, and you know, sensocracy, meaning there's sensors everywhere, and the sensors are gonna register everything we do. We're gonna live in a sort of mass behaviorist society, register everything we do, knowing everything about ourselves. We can even go and ask the machines, what is the next thought I'm gonna have? And the machine will tell us what will be our next thought.
Yeah, wow. Yeah.
That's gonna happen soon, right? Okay, relax. Okay, if we pull this off, we can save the climate, we can stay on the planet, we can probably create a sustainable system. We even can avoid the next ice age. So we can keep 10 billion people on the planet for the foreseeable future. Idiots or not, we don't know yet. We're probably gonna go in and, you know, start fiddling around with our genes soon as well, and hopefully at least create something better and more sustainable than we are right now. But this whole move is the move towards communism.
Yeah. So you're talking geoengineering on a massive scale, and
yes,
you also just mentioned you know, tampering with the DNA, and you know,
already happening.
And so you can see how that might, and then you're linking that to communism. You see how that those ideas might make some people a bit hysterical.
Yes. Yeah. Which is why I'm saying you need to go back and revisit 1945 and rewrite history. We have so much shit to deal with we never dealt in 1945. Nick Land is a very controversial philosopher, but a genius. Okay, he's only published fragments in a couple of books so far, but he's my generation. So Simon Critchley, Alexander Bard, Nick Land. Read all three. Okay, we're very connected. Nick Land, like me, is a Deleuzian, and he sits in Shanghai in China. He left the West and moved to the East. Lives there with his family, a happy guy, you know. Met him last year, sat down with him and talked to him. And Nick Land says the most important thing, why it's so controversial, is that we never dealt with 1945 properly because we turned Adolf Hitler into the ultimate evil, like metaphysical evil. Then Hannah Arendt tried to make us understand, well, that's not actually true. Okay?
Banality of evil.
Banal to begin with, so it's not metaphysical. Okay, it's very concrete. But by turning Adolf Hitler into something very not nuanced, but into ultimate evil, we allowed ourselves to just say, I'm not Hitler, and suddenly you were allowed on the stage, right? Meaning we created enormous mediocrity. We live in a society of mass mediocrity today.
Because we're not willing to look at our own, let's say, inner Hitler or our own darkest parts of our soul?
No. We don't understand that the world is complex and things are nuanced. And Hitler can be understood as a little boy pharaoh who should never have had power in the first place. On the other hand, he wrote the books, he wrote in the 1920s, he did everything in public, and the Germans loved him, meaning we have to be scared of ourselves. The German people were evil, if anybody was evil in 1938, okay? German culture has dealt a lot with that. They still haven't gone to the real depth of it. The rest of us have to deal with it too, but not in trying to find our shadow and get the evil out of us. No, there is no evil. There is no good. There's just constructive and destructive ideas.
You mean there's no absolute, are you saying there's no, like there's no platonic model of evil and no absolute?
No.
Platonic, is that what you're saying?
Nietzsche and Marx never talk about good and evil. That's why they're brilliant. Hegel doesn't talk about good and evil. Good and evil were thrown out when we threw out the model Kant out of Western philosophy. Okay? Point being, you either have a short-term plan and you try to grab whatever you can grab for your own good. That's American individualism for you. You might grab what is good for your nuclear family. That's even more American, but that's how far you go. Anything else, you shoot them with a gun, right? Okay, that's a very, very narrow-minded perspective. No wonder America has done more to destroy the climate on this planet than anybody else ever did, okay? So a sustainable model is prioritizing constructive mindset. And I go to ancient Persian philosophy or to Zoroastrianism, because in Zoroastrianism, the ethics is very simple and straightforward, but absolutely brilliant. Your two concepts, Asha and Druj. Druj is to have a very short-sighted, destructive mentality, meaning, I'll grab whatever I can grab and I'll grab it now. Okay, then you kill yourself or somebody kills you very soon. Nothing's going to work. You're not going to have a civilization that way. But that is essentially what American individualism is, right? The alternative to Druj is Asha, which is that, okay, I extend myself as far as I possibly can to look at the long-term effects, meaning we're not dealing with climate change, really. Climate's always changed. We're dealing with avoiding the next ice age 20,000 years from now. Okay, so we need to create climate-controlling technologies. Otherwise, we're smoked anyway. So we might as well do that. So that is Asha. And Asha is related to Tantra, because Tantra is like a life school coming out of India and Tibet that meets with Persia and China. And Tantra teaches you, if you prolong things and stay with something instead of taking the reward instantly, you'll get paid off much better in the end. That's basically investment theory. Invest in the future, invest in your children, invest in your grandchildren. That is Asha in Persian philosophy, and it's a brilliant way of looking at the world. So instead of good and evil, we should look at Asha and Druj. And if you discuss Adolf Hitler, well, he talked about the 1,000-year Reich, but it was obvious he would last at the most 11 years and then kill himself from the very beginning. Nazism was nothing but a death cult, Platonistic death cult.
Okay.
What we're talking about here is called communism. It's the exact opposite. It's the ultimate God point into the future, the ultimate promised land we have to get. And if we don't get there, we're not going to survive. It really is a call for an exodus. And that exodus is we need to leave things as they are now and move all of society using technology towards society where technology helps us loving the stranger.
Okay.
It's going to be incredibly hard for us to do. We're going to do everything we can to protest. So we have to remind people, causing no, there's no way. You've got to love the stranger, because we're all going to be one people on this planet, 7 or 10 billion of us, and we need to make this planet work because we don't have anywhere else to go. There's nothing else but coldness and rocks out there. No life, nothing else. This is all we have. We saw it in 1958. We saw the picture of this planet. It was blue and green. We loved it ever since. This is the only thing we have. So
I like very much the ethic of love the stranger. I mean, there's probably a naive side to that, which could be dangerous, but at the same time, that seems to be the right ethic, isn't it? I mean, the right moving forward ethic.
Critcher's done great work in this department. I'm going to use him a lot. I've used him in the past. Before we wrote Syntheism, Critcher wrote a book called The Faith of the Faithless, where he discussed pure faith as a concept. Beautiful book. On the book on passion, the book of faith. Alain Badiou is a French thinker. He's also written a lot about the event. He's thinking a lot about people who commit themselves to something. He writes about love as an act of commitment. Okay, true commitment, not like getting married and swearing oaths or anything, but like I'm committed to an idea. I'm committed to my truth. I'm acting on that truth. If Jordan Peterson had studied Alain Badiou, he would have found an ally all along. Maybe Žižek can point him in that direction, okay? So there's been a lot of thinking coming out of what I would call communist thought out of Europe for the past 50 years, where communism has been a bad word because Stalin and Mao, made it dirty. Time to retake the word. Žižek is a communist. I'm a communist. Retake the word, because the only goal point we can have for civilization to make this planet survive, at least as humans, is communism. There is no other alternative. That's essentially what the internet is trying us to do. It's trying us to turn us into communists. Mm-hmm. And instead of that is an internet that has to be an internet that has to have hierarchy. Mm-hmm. So the hierarchies are already now maturing. They're called nodes.
Okay.
And
nodes are hierarchy. According to you, nodes are hierarchies within communist. My question is how does hierarchy fit within communism? Because we would think that a communist vision would be a non-hierarchical vision, right?
No.
I mean, I know you were going to say no, but that's just how people think of communism is that we flatten out inequality and everybody.
Wait a second.
Silly idea, right?
Karl Marx says there's nothing wrong with the capitalist. Let's just beat him at his own game. And he says the proletarian has to be better than the capitalist creating value. If the proletarian, through his community, does not create a higher value for people than the capitalist and his market does on his own, then communism is worthless. Then it's failed. Okay, so there has to be a higher value, and because we're tribal, and we now have technologies that make us even more tribal, and can extract value out of tribalism, meaning you can create communities or teams who do brilliant work together. We call them corporations.
Yeah.
Okay? Again, congregation, corporation. Okay, so that is what communism does. And of course, what I'm saying is I'm not going to force you to become a communist. I'm just going to tell you that unless we become communists, we don't have anywhere to go. It's the only order we can have in the chaos. And that's the way to go forward. But of course, communism will be offered. Do you want to join or not? Do you want to be part of this? Or do you want to shit and consume and be fucked up and go to see your therapist 5 times a day and go to the gym every day and hate yourself or whatever you're doing now? Because the existential malaise we've arrived at is exactly where capitalism would take us. This is what Deleuze and Guattari prophetically said 50 years ago before the internet arrived and said, no. Capitalism is only going to lead to mass schizophrenia. That is chaos. Schizophrenia is a word for internal chaos. And if you want to get order in your head, have an order instead of chaos. You got to get a direction to your own life. Your direction, according to Heidegger, is towards the moment when you die. When you die is the moment when everything that happened before that moment guts its value. So you sort of throw yourself to a moment when you're going to die, where you hopefully you become a whole human being, you lived a full life, there's nothing else for you to do, and then you throw yourself back to the current moment, and everything in your life at this very moment gets its value because of it. That is the same idea as the communist idea. The communist idea is basically, think of communism as a world with intense creativity, constant experimentation, constant renewal. Again, Persian philosophy, how about that? Renewal. It's not a Platonistic fantasy that's a perfect world, because perfection is just dead, okay? It's an imperfect world that constantly renews itself. That principle goes all about in Persian philosophy. So that's the communist ideal I'm for. I'm like a Zoroastrian communist, if you like, okay? So if you have that communist ideal in your mind, suddenly everything you do today, politically, spiritually, career-wise, relation-wise, starts to make sense. It gets meaning.
Yeah. So, and if you try to find meaning in the individual,
We tried that for 400 years. Get over it.
It's a lonely exercise. So it's like.
Are you going to be another one of these guys who write only sales pitch newsletters all the time? We hate you. We hate these people. We hate the individuals today. We can't stand them any longer. We're tired of the narcissism. We're tired of the people who put things out there to be liked and to be shared. We're tired of that. We want a proper social dialogue on how we're going to proceed and what we're going to do next. And we'll listen to each other if we take knowledge to heart, and if people study hard. We want to listen to teachers now. We want to listen to people who studied really hard to explain to us what they found, so we can make up our own minds and we can know where to go to study on our own. It's back to the books. That's what it's all about now.
So it's kind of like utopianism mixed with traditionalism in a way. Like it's like you have to have a tradition, right? You have to be studying different traditions, right?
Yes.
You can't just
tradition is the word for
you can't be just making
where
it
do you
up.
come?
making it up as you go on. Like that's the darkness of the Rousseauian vision, right? It's like the child is already, you're already good just the way you are, right? Whereas that's kind of,
that's exactly why Rousseauians tell the kids to kill their parents. That's exactly the Chinese Cultural Revolution. There is nothing Marxist at all about the Chinese Cultural Revolution. It screams Rousseau. It is the ultimate Rousseauian nightmare. And it happened in China in the 1960s, okay? If that happened in China, what the heck has that got to do with Marxism or communism? Nothing.
So
we have to rewrite history, and we have to rewrite it, starting with Stalin and Hitler. Yeah, they were very destructive, both of them. They were little boys who were running little empires, and they were running it through hatred. Yes, but we don't understand ourselves if we don't write that history properly, in detail, because we cannot map ourselves otherwise.
The extreme danger that I see is this sort of, as you say, infantilization, rather than getting deep into the tradition, into the thought, into the idea. People are just attaching themselves to any kind of whatever node it would be, like this negative tribalism.
Well, what happened was that it's not even tribalism, it's just dysfunctionality, social dysfunctionality. Okay, what happened was that after the Second World War, American pop culture and television started celebrating the teenager. This is the 1950s, right?
Yeah.
That then spread across the world, and people tried to be prolonged teenagers. It's like people try to stay teenagers their entire lives and never grow up. Yeah. It's like adolescence, which is like the idea is to keep the sex drive, keep your genital organs, keep the grown-up body, but keep it beautiful forever, never let it age, and never have to grow up and be a full grown-up human being and deny you're ever gonna die, okay? That's the American teenage ideal. It's the ultimate form of Cartesianism. The ultimate form of Cartesianism. That then spread, and then the internet came along in the 1990s, and of course all these children in grown-up bodies that our societies are full of thought the internet was for them. It's my turn to be discovered. It's my turn to walk up on the stage. It's my turn to be sexually adored. It's my turn to get, you know, and the youthful sexualized body was idealized, and wisdom disappeared completely. Wisdom was out the window. No, wisdom is not cool anymore. We're all doing youth now. We're all doing sex now. We're all fucking like mad. We fuck around. We take tons of drugs. We do all these libertine things. Okay, that wasn't the libertine things that were meant to be shamanic only for the few. Suddenly fell into the mainstream, and the result of that was an infantilized society. And this is the key word in digital libido, is that we call it infantilization. That's exactly the state of current society. When you say that Americans have an obesity epidemic, no, there's no obesity epidemic in America. There's just tons of kids who can't stop eating because they're children and they want tit in their mouth all the time. Eat, eat, just stop eating. An epidemic is over, right? They can't because they're children. They're children. So we arrived at that, and now people think the internet is going to promote this infantilization. And all they do is share pictures of themselves looking as great as possible. And then they put on mechanisms on their smartphones to look better than they actually look. Meaning every damn picture people see is a false picture. We live in a complete sexualized fairy tale. What it means to be human.
Yeah. Sexualized fairy tale, yeah, that's well put.
The sexualized fairy tale is the adolescence taken to its extreme. It's called Peter Pan syndrome. Meaning you want to go into adulthood and steal what your grown-ups have, which is, of course, the grown-up genitals. So you can have a sex life that grown-ups do. You want to steal that, but still be a child with everything else. And we built the welfare state, we built consumer society on everything like this. And capitalism, of course, exploited. And this essentially is what capitalism is. Capitalism arrives at a state of infantilized mass schizophrenia.
So we're back to Marx. We're talking about exploitation, right? We're just talking about exploitation. Yeah. Like pure exploitation. Because it's exploitation of this youth, right? Which is the most sort of...
And a society where everybody believes they have to exploit everything they run into instead of imploiting it, means they don't understand Tantra, which is exploitation. They don't understand Asha over Droid, which is, again, imploitation over exploitation. It's just like, grab whatever you can grab, you can grab it. Well, that's a child's attitude to life. As a grown-up, I study something. I check out if somebody owns this. Then I check out maybe if I can share it with somebody. Oh, you own this property? What if I rent this property from you and build something on it? So, yeah, why don't you do that? We do something together. Okay, collaboration, collaboration, collaboration. Okay, meaning what it means to be human is to be a collaborator, not a competitor. It means to be grown up, not a child. It means to be a fully grown up, not adolescent. It means to be you're a grown up person taking responsibility for life. Jordan's right about that. Camille Pagler's right about that. What they don't talk about is where this grown up person is going to go.
Mm-hmm. And you're saying it's going to go towards a more communist society, perhaps, just on its own, or more communal society? No?
Well, it's going to go towards netocracy first, meaning some people get it. They will get ahead of everybody else because they get it. They will create the thriving communities that will then lead. That's why I go to Burning Man, because a place like Burning Man, that's where people go these days. That's where the cultural engineers of the future go. Because in the foreseeable future, if you're somewhere between Las Vegas and San Francisco mentally, you'll do okay in America. Same thing everywhere else. The cultural engineer comes now. Mm-hmm. The therapeutes come now. It's just like we have to reorient what it means to be human and get that right. But we also need a direction. And that direction, the name of that direction is Inter-tribalism. And Inter-tribalism is the hardest thing ever. And the priests have always known that this was the hardest thing to do. From tribe to clan, from clan to nation, were very, very hard steps to take. Bloody developments took hundreds of years or thousands of years, enormous amounts of imagination and storytelling and narratives and things to finally get it right, to finally have fewer wars and longer periods of peace. Mm-hmm. We have to do that all over again. And I don't think we cannot do it this time. We cannot go from nation to empire unless we take help from the machines. And I study Aristotle now. I study Alexander the Great's empire. I study the Persian Empire. I study the loosely held confederations that worked over time. They were not totalitarian. And see how they worked and why they worked. We need to study the trade routes again. We need to study who did something similar previously in history and succeeded on a smaller scale. Can we do it now on a larger scale with the help of the machines? Mm-hmm. Great. Mm-hmm. So you and I have retaken God and religion and the word communism. And we've literally done it before the Žižek Peterson debate in Toronto. Mm-hmm. Everything else trickles down from the grand narrative, from the Exodus. That's exactly what the grand narratives are for. Communist utopia is not about perfection. That would be
okay, that's very, very important. That's so important. Yeah.
You have a starting point. It's called causality. Where do we come from? Mm-hmm. And you have an end point, the God point. Where are we going? And it might take thousands of years to get there, millions of years to get there, but we have a point. We have a direction. Because we have a direction, we can make decisions about everything we do today. We can have a functioning ethics in contemporary society because it comes down, trickles down from the grand narrative. That is exactly why religion is so damn important.